My thinking in pulling together this panel was that I'm interested to hear and share some of the zines and self-publishing work that's happening against the backdrop of the pandemic, the uprisings of the last few months, and the unstable material conditions that have forced a lot of us to change the way we work this year. Generally, as zine makers, readers, fans, we understand that whose stories are told, how they're told, who tells them, and for what purpose are all deeply political and reflect power structures and dynamics already present in society as a whole, stuff that's only becoming more apparent. And as the concepts of mutual aid and collective care have started to enter the mainstream this year, I think there's real value in highlighting the inroads that have made a lot of this work possible and how that takes so many forms, not least the role of creative work and print in particular. As we're each being called on to reassess where we're at, the skills we have and the resources we have access to, zines have shown themselves to be a very immediate way of carrying some of these conversations. The sprawling nature of the UK's DIY communities means lots of us do already have inroads to informal support networks. I'm interested in how zine makers and zine collectives particularly have changed track these last few months to keep things afloat and prioritise the needs of their communities. If zines are one of the tools we're using in imagining different futures, what's next? We've seen lots of events move online and plenty that just haven't been able to. This session isn't really a usual kind of panel setup. It is pre-recorded, which perhaps reflects some of the joys and frustrations of this new world. The following clips are kind of a collage of field notes from a few of us making zines and working with print around the UK. I was really keen to highlight the ways a lot of this work expands off the page through print projects, but equally recent fundraising, grassroots campaigns, mutual aid, all of the stuff we found ourselves doing that perhaps we weren't imagining at the start of the year. My friend, the artist Carolina Hicks, often refers to the act of correspondence as a living archive of love and inspiration, which is, I hope, how this broadcast might be looked at. Joining me, I have Rose Nordin. Rose is a member of the print collective OOMK, which stands for One of My Kind. The group have been working together since 2014. Each of the issues of the zine centres around a different creative theme, exploring topics of faith, activism and identity. The group run the Rabbits Road Press in East London, which offers open access risograph facilities. They're also the organisers of DIY Cultures, which is one of the UK's largest annual independent publishing fairs. Rose also works as a freelance designer and illustrator, which we talk about a bit here too. Jade Chow is part of the collective Daikon, a group of Southeast and East Asian women and non-binary people. Through their zine, they've really carved out a space for underrepresented voices and narratives and used it to critically examine and respond to structural inequality here in the UK and across Europe. George Gibson is part of Shy Bairns, a print collective based in Manchester. The group met studying on the Art Foundation course at Sunderland University and have since developed a collaborative practice which has included work with galleries and workshops in the community. And my name is Cherry Styles. I'm an artist and a zine maker living in Huddersfield. Since 2012, I've helped run Salford Zine Library, organise Northwest Zine Fest, and I'm part of the queer artist collective Strange Perfume. I started Synchronise Witches Press mainly to share zines made by people involved in the Chapes, which was my comp zine project that ran from 2011 to 2016. I tried to be quite intentional with what I put out and the parts of my life that I make public with my zines. That's something that's only intensified in the last few years as I got sick with a chronic illness. and to now be considering the current public health crisis and how that's reflected in the creative work coming out of this time feels really important. If making art of any kind is putting together feelings, experiences, words, and forging connections, which is how I understand it, then zines can offer a really immediate way of processing the world around us on our own terms. They can be as outward or as inward facing as we need them to be. This feels like a really crucial point at which to be having some of these conversations. So huge thanks to the folks at Tusk for inviting us to contribute to this year's programme, and thank you all so much for joining us. I will pop back at the end of the session just to close out, and I will be sharing a lot of the resources mentioned throughout the conversation online too. Please do reach out to any of us if you want to. Also, I think we're all fairly easy to find on Twitter. How are things where you are? Like, how has lockdown been?
It's been weird. It's been a lot to adjust to, but I think maybe you can relate to like being quite like precarious, I suppose, but in like being freelance and always being quite used to perching on cafe tables to work, doing things in different spaces, jumping between residencies and working from home. It doesn't feel like as much of a jump as a lot of people are experiencing at all. I can really appreciate that. And also I recognize that being a designer slash artist as opposed to an artist really like meant that I was safer in many ways financially, because I could still do like semi-commercial work in like for like gallery spaces and things online.
Yeah.
So I did feel like there were enough safety nets to mean that I could get by, but it's been obviously like a huge adjustment. I really missed the press and I missed being in the studio. I missed my, I mean, the connection that I feel like is really vital to our kind of practice. It's just, you know, it's very like, it is social. So it's been definitely a shift. But I did also feel like we were the best equipped, not just in our like work setup, but just in our communities to survive it. You know, I felt like, well, we've all been building on this whole like looking after each other, sharing resources, checking in, making it work in a scrappy way for years anyway. So in a lot of ways, I felt like now's our time, Cherry.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
how many of us see each other once a year at a zine fest, and like
Exactly.
that's our whole friendship is based around those kind of like snatched conversations. Like I feel like the amount of time we've both spent in the same room together is like not very much, but I feel like I know so much about the work that you do and the different groups that you're involved with. Yeah, I mean, it really got me thinking about how like I definitely feel like I've always used zines as a way to keep in touch with people, and maybe that's just because I've always had a lot of friends kind of spread around the country from living in different places. But I feel like a lot of us do use zines in that way anyway, to kind of make friends and keep in touch with each other, like in kind of weird, those weird circumstances anyway. It's so true.
Yeah, and my like collection, I have things that you've made, and like you said, I feel like you are like a name that I've never not known, and you're in my collections of things and like legendary. But actually, when I thought about, oh, I'm just going to sit and speak with Cherry for like an hour, it was like actually I wouldn't have done that outside of this circumstance. So that's pretty kind of nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the amazing thing about zines. I mean, one of the amazing things about zines is you can know all these things about people. One of the things that I've been doing a lot more of in lockdown is, and I think a lot of this actually was to do with not having access to a photocopier. So I thought, oh well, I'm not going to make any zines for a little while. But then actually, what I was doing was writing a lot more letters. So I ended up like basically making zines, but like one at a time for different people. And like the things I'm making, and maybe just on a much smaller scale. And I think before I was so preoccupied with distribution and like how I could make as many copies of something as possible. and now everything else in my life has kind of zoomed in a little bit. So also have those little like things that are going out into the world, everything's scaled down a bit.
Yeah, but the processes are the same, or like you're still relying on those.
Yeah.
But it made me think what would be super nice, like if you were making one version of something and then you posted it, like say to Rabbit's Road, and then we printed like 30 and then we posted them back like on the press, like in particular colors. That could be such a sweet way of then it being like this funny little back and forth, like subscription or distribution model that would be super basic and really slow, but like
no, I think I like it's a shame that George isn't here as well today, because I know Shy Burns have been doing a lot of stuff with sending out like monthly zines that they've been making, and I think part of that
they stuff out,
they're so good, and I think for them part of that has been just like, oh wow, we have a reason to just put something else out each month. Lots of people talking about mail art, and I feel like for so many of us making zines, that's always kind of been part of what we've been doing, and people find our work in weird ways anyway, but now just thinking about it as something, maybe our work's having to kind of shift the way we get that stuff. Oh my god, yeah, Rabbit's Road, mail art, distribution network.
Yeah, we did these packs, Sherry, like with Here Gallery, where we originally were doing all these workshops but had to scale it into these little boxes that I think Girl Zine Fair also did, like these little packs to send out, and that there was a lot. I mean, those were such a like pleasure to put together actually, and they felt really like they were acknowledging also just access as well. And we've spoken a lot about how it was always possible for institutions to make an online version of events, but it didn't seem like it was happening at all. So now at least I feel like that shift's been really positive for accessibility.
I have some I have these here.
Oh hey, those were traumatic to print and assemble.
I don't know how well that will show up on the webcam, but these are both beautiful little, well, this one is like a pack of cards, this one is a little thing. So who worked with you? Designed this, didn't you, Rose?
Yeah, I designed them. So like Sophia's been working with Bethlehem Gallery, setting up a press there for a long time, and then 2 resident sort of artists put together the content.
What I'm going to do, obviously we're recording this, but when it's broadcast, I'm going to just pull together some resources and stuff. So when it's live, I can tweet out some things, so I can send out some links to all of these people's work. But yeah, these are gorgeous. And were these printed at Rabbit's Road?
Yeah, I was, like I said, a little traumatic because I kept getting the scale wrong. And so the first version of those cards, Sherry, were like little Tic Tac box size, like tiny, and Sophia.
They're all beautifully like exactly the same size.
Sophia swooped in and saved the day. Bigger.
And so all of these, I mean, I can't even. This is folded together so nicely.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll maybe just share a picture online of the 2 of these together, because then they were both then just folded so perfectly into the little envelope. So good. Yeah, I mean, it was really amazing how many of those projects, especially like at the start of lockdown, a lot of us that were doing things with galleries and different community groups suddenly was like, oh, can you send it through the post? And all of a sudden there was loads of stuff online, like, do you want some of this? Do you want this? Have a look. Which was really exciting, because I think that's something that we just don't really think about. I don't know, face to face always seems better when it comes to making things, but yeah, hopefully that's something that's here to stay now.
But did you do any like zine workshops online, Cherry?
I haven't really at all, but then I've seen loads of people doing loads of exciting things, and people kind of trying out different formats. Like I think even getting together with a few of your mates and having like a semi-regular chat like this, and you could maybe all be making stuff or just showing each other things that you've been making. I think there's so much like importance in that. I mean, always, but especially at the moment.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy enough to set that recurring like Google Hangout thing. That's what I've been doing for my friends too, like just sitting every Sunday and making things. But I did do one workshop because I really felt the same as you. I was really dubious about doing workshops online, and because it's quite hit and miss, and you're kind of reading a room at the, like, even in person, like sometimes you can come away feeling so energized, and others like really deflated, and like they didn't, the chemistry isn't there. Like they can often feel like circumstantial, like the kind of people that come together, the weather, the conversation, and how those zines turn out, right? And because I can come away from them saying like I'm never doing that again, and then other times I'm like, oh, I feel changed. I feel like I've reached some enlightenment through these workshops. But there was one I did, quite near the beginning, with Brent 2020, the Borough of Culture, and I mean their program I think is like problematic in many ways, and but I sort of I'd worked with this young people's collective before, and I thought it would be nice to sit with them and see them. And the workshops were surprisingly, actually, it was just across 2 sessions, and they were like surprisingly much like the good ones that happen, like the conversations that happen. And everybody then like took photo of each of their pages and sent it to me so I could compile little gifs of them. And it actually, I feel like there's one of the coordinators on that. I just felt like I was strangely got to know her very intimately over like the 2-hour zine workshop.
Oh, that's so nice.
And lots of them, it was actually, it really was a bit of a lifeline in those early months, to be in that space. So it was very lucky that it worked out, because it could have just been like a bit of a awkward disaster.
Yeah, totally. And you're so right about that being hit and miss, like the people that you end up just sitting there with talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was really exciting seeing how many people, especially people who suddenly had a lot of time on their hands, a lot of nervous energy, and not really knowing what to do with themselves, suddenly being like, oh my God, I'm going to make a zine because I've always wanted to do this and I've never really had the time or like the motivation to do it. And I think hearing about people maybe making zines for the first time this year just feels really, really good. And maybe, because I guess like those of us that go to zine fests, we're maybe used to having those conversations with people. So realizing that we can still make all of those connections, I mean, some of those connections online feels really important.
Have you been to any of the online book fairs at all?
Not really. Oh my God. It's,
I don't know what it'd be like. Yeah, I can imagine.
It's ASP this weekend, isn't it? Or I think it's this weekend.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't really though. Have you?
No, there was a few. I can't think which ones. I think it was like there was like Brooklyn something zine fair or something. There were a couple that were popping up, and I always saved it to my Instagram thing, to check it out. But I didn't ever show up, and that felt quite like a habit I developed from a lot of the online talks and things that I really wanted to see, but just I ended up not going at all, because time and space shifted entirely.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it works. I think New York Book Fair is going to be online this year, which is like a huge. I mean, that's if it's anywhere near the number of people who go to the actual book fair.
Yeah.
They're going to take up a lot of the internet. Like it just seems bananas.
I mean, even this feels like it was a long time ago now, like July, around International Zine Month, there was quite a lot of stuff. I just felt like there was maybe more people sharing things online. Like I'm going to have a break from just sharing awful news stories and share some zines I've been reading or some zines that I love that are also online. And I think loads of places putting up PDFs. I mean, I guess it's not the same, but it felt like a really refreshing way of using some of that stuff. Like thinking if people can't see this in real life, what are we going to do with it? I think, I was really thinking as well, like around definitely kind of at the start of, well, I guess kind of March time and around the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff, because there was this explosion of people sharing links to resources. A lot of the time they were zines, or it was printed material that had then been shared as PDFs or scanned in. And I think realizing that a lot of that stuff that did already exist, those resources, that stuff we already had access to a lot of it. And I think, I don't know, I think a lot of us were sitting there thinking like, oh, what do I do now? What am I useful for in this moment? And realizing that we a lot of us do have those things that we can share.
Yeah.
Felt really good. I mean, I feel like I'm always talking about zines being a way of sharing information, and I guess maybe sometimes I forget that information can be thoughts and feelings as well as everything else, you know. It's really powerful.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Because during when like you said, there's like this feeling of like, what action can I take, or like what can I use? And when the Black Lives Matter protests started kind of building, that kind of the atmosphere I felt really like useless. And we worked on this print Black Lives Matter website with all the downloadable resources for like posters and things, which it felt useful, but it also felt a little lackluster. It felt a little bit like it wasn't rich in its content or thought. It felt very kind of like it felt like a bit of a stamp of just like, that's kind of done. But what I found really valuable about that, because I did feel like, it's not that I was disappointed, it just felt like that's the limitation to what I could do in that moment. And it was fine. But the thing that felt kind of more like, it resonated with me more, felt more useful, was where I was in South London. There were a lot of people who wanted the physical posters. So I was just cycling around with my like little postman bag, delivering them. And it was more the conversations that I had with people at a distance from their doorstep, like ending, like, you know, lingering for like an hour in the end, like at each door, chatting to people, getting more kind of feeling a little bit more like that there was some unity, solidarity, and that there were always like book recommendations. There were always things to like think about, come away with.
Yeah,
And
that's so exciting.
that was actually the part that made me feel like I could contribute, or I could, you know, I could take on more responsibility. The actual, the uploading of PDFs felt a little bit like a weak gesture, but the rest of it, like, it was progress.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's that thing of print, especially, always kind of being a way in, one way or another, like a way into conversations or a way to get to know people a little bit better.
Yeah, because you're sort of talking around and something.
Yeah.
Kind of like a nice little token. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So have you got anything like on the cards at the moment, or anything you're thinking that you'd like to be making, or I don't know, how are you feeling at the moment?
Well, I feel good question. I feel like I want to see my friends more, and I feel well, there was a publication that I made for Art Night during lockdown, because Art Night, the event, was supposed to happen here at Somerset House, and obviously has been postponed. But they were super kind about getting some Arts Council money to have a few of us produce content for the website. And I made a publication that was a series of fortune cookies and how to make them, and then like make your own fortune cookie content as well. And I think I'm gonna, now that I'm back at the press more, I want to print those out and send those to friends and anyone who wants them. I'm also working on a few like commission publications that feel quite responsive to the situation. There's one with Cement Fields and the Thames Estuary Festival, that was supposed to be like this poetry residency that was responding to the Thames Estuary. It would become a publication, but because those workshops couldn't take place, it's more of a publication around how to teach contemporary poetry, and also reacting to the fact that poetry's been taken off school curriculums like this September. It seems heartbreaking. So that so those publications and billboards will kind of be rolled out early next year. So I'm working on that. I worked on like a publication with Portland, the IPRC, the Independent Publishing Resource Center in Portland.
Okay, that sounds good.
So that was because that was supposed to be Design Week in Portland, and Portland's been fascinating to sort of, I mean, I always have heart eyes for Portland because of all their DIY culture and their mountains and their general air of coolness. But I worked at that center like last year for a residency, and watching them now, like it seems to be like this like this, everything that is happening during this time, BLM, COVID, and all natural like environmental disasters, seems like there's like this amplified version of all of that happening in Portland or across Oregon.
Yeah,
that has been heartbreaking. And also it seems like this like vision of the future for other cities. So their project that they were working on was to raise money for Don't Shoot PDX and various other like various other funds that go directly to particular demographics. So seeing them put all their like zines online, so I made a zine for them that was sort of a resource of other zines related to the UK and resistance. And they made this really fun library that we've got a library at Rabbits Road Press online, and that was like really interesting to see how they rolled it out. They worked on this resource. I thought that was really beautiful, and I'd love to print the publication again that I made for them and send some over. But yeah, watching what's occurring over there and how mutual aid and the zine community, like the DIY community, are really just so like in the thick of it. It really feels like, yeah, everything that the way they operate anyway really has come to it's really come to a fore now. And that while it's super tragic in so many ways, you see like the community and just how beautifully people are reacting.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good to hear. Yeah, because I think we do recognize that we're in this position where we have these kind of informal support networks across the country anyway through kind of creative projects, and I think realizing that we're maybe on the brink of something here, like how can we use these networks, is maybe just something quite exciting and terrifying to think about at the moment. So definitely like looking at what's happening in other countries just seems really inspiring.
Yeah, and I think like the whole, I suppose the lack of like public healthcare and like support for housing, it feels like this extreme version that's going on, but that like post Brexit the UK is moving towards, and observing how mutual aid has been functioning. And how galleries have opened up the space just to kind of support protesters and to support people who are like suffering through like unemployment during this time. Like it really shows like how to organize. I think that we just have to be really prepared for, but also that it's done with so much tenderness and love is just like it's there's a lot to learn from. What are you working on at the moment?
Not a lot. I mean, like, yeah, I feel like kind of part of this whole, I mean, I suppose lockdown and like not working as much, it's made me kind of just think about, I don't know, even over the last few years, I feel like I'm someone who is often referred to as like a prolific zine maker, and realizing that I do kind of just churn things out. It's maybe given me a bit of time to work on things quietly, privately, like realizing I don't have to just print everything straight away, which feels like a very valuable lesson to be learning, and just kind of maybe just working on a few things slowly, which I think is something a lot of us don't really have time for once you start working on commissions and other things. But I'm really loving writing letters and making cards, so like definitely thinking more about mail art and things that we can do there. I would love to stay in touch and just chat more about that.
Yeah, I sent out some at the beginning of lockdown, Cherry. I worked honestly for 8 days on a book. Like I think it was quite a response to the situation I was in. I was like, got to occupy myself with a task, and there was this book that I love that was gifted to me by a friend like maybe 6-7 years ago, who moved away, and I got it in my head that I was going to redesign this book and bind it and post it to a friend I speak to very rarely. It was like such an insane moment, but it got done. Like over that 8 days it got done, and I posted it off, but then I realized like I'd had a lot of posts get lost to America, and I was like convinced that it was just gone forever. But it did get received, and I might even share with you just to get your opinion. Like I got the Google link, like I made a Google link of it so that it was like immortalized. But like the thought of that now, I could not produce that in that amount of time, not just because I've got like work back on, but also just it was like you said, a nervous energy that had to go somewhere. And like I was thinking about connectivity, the people from far, and like I had an episode and it ended up in this book. It resulted in a book. So
yeah. That's beautiful.
Bonkers, yeah.
Yeah. It feels really inspiring and exciting to chat though. Just thinking about, I guess the work that will come out of the next few months and years, and how that is going to feel different. Hopefully in a positive way.
Do you have any mega like goals now that we're in this new world? Do you have any dreams?
That's a great question.
Do you have any dreams left?
I think, I don't know. I think a lot of the things I'm doing in terms of like personal work and making things, I think definitely having this like extended period of being at home has made me realize that anything can become a habit if you just kind of trick yourself into doing it a few times. Like even when that's something enjoyable, I think we all probably have stuff like, oh, I want to go for a walk, or I want to write in my diary, or whatever it is. I think actually realizing that our brains are quite fickle, and if you know something makes you feel good, you can sort of force yourself to do it. And I think with creative stuff, like I really need to do that sometimes. So yeah, maybe just a few more months of forcing myself to write everything down. And
and that has so many levels of like positive effects, writing things down, like I think mentally it's like really beneficial as well as creatively.
I think definitely like in the I feel like I keep saying the early days, like the early days of lockdown. I definitely felt like so overwhelmed, like oh my god, so many people are having such a shit time, and I'm okay right now, this is okay. And it was really kind of paralyzing. Like I think so many of us were just in survival mode, and we weren't really doing creative stuff. And every time I went on Instagram, it seemed like people were recording albums and doing lots of things. And I was just like upset 24/7 and just couldn't process anything. So now I feel like we've got to a stage maybe where some of us are, I guess, like leveling out of it and being like, okay, what capacity do I have to do these things, and what can I prioritize to keep myself not feeling like shit all the time? I mean, there's things coming out the other side of that.
I think so. And I think I was really in denial for a lot of the time. Because I had actually come back from, like, we went into lockdown shortly after I returned from Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, when I came back, I was like, there's some kind of virus. Like I was like, I feel like it's a conspiracy. I don't believe it. And everyone was like, haven't you read the news? Because I had a few people messaging me saying, are you going to be able to come back from Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Okay. And I really was completely like, wasn't that I just wasn't engaging with the news. I was just like, I had decided that it was like pretend. And then when we went into lockdown, I feel the same. I was just like, time to get busy with some projects. I didn't really confront it being this reality. But also, I mean, you work at university, and I did work at university, and I was sort of teaching online a bit and realizing the impact on these young people. Also awkwardly, we're both seeing each other's bedrooms, and then feeling weird about seeing 20-year-olds' bedrooms, and then also realizing, oh, like what have they even got to go back to, and like what are they going to graduate into? And I probably graduated into a recession, felt sorry for myself, but this is like what is going to be on the other side of their education. That really started to the reality of that, and how institutions, like how art schools run, really just my mind was like, so much has to change. In response to everything.
Yeah, totally. like the job I've had for the last few years in a university library, I've had access to a photocopier, super cheap printing, and then I lost my job at the start of middle of March, you know, kind of when lockdown kind of happened. So I feel like it really derailed any creative thought I was having, which I think has maybe been the case for a lot of people. I feel like I kind of just went into survival mode. So the idea of talking about zines for a little while maybe seemed quite stupid or not helpful. And I think over the last few weeks, I've just been having more conversations with people about, like, I guess these informal support networks that we definitely all benefit from, kind of through DIY communities, you know, through Zine Fest especially, and all the stuff we're kind of missing out on this year. I feel like the zine community very quickly got very creative about how we were going to stay connected, or maybe just kind of change track a little bit to support some of those people, kind of without zine fests, I guess. So that focus kind of maybe went away from zines, or I don't know, all sorts of other creative projects have been popping up. And yeah, so that was my kind of impetus for getting in touch with you guys. I was sort of thinking about zine collectives, especially, that have just kind of had these like super quick, exciting kind of responses to what was going on. And I think at the moment we're all kind of being called upon to kind of reassess where we're at and think about how we can kind of help our communities and ourselves and keep things going. So with Daikon, I know you folks have been doing a lot of fundraising, and Shy Benz were in this kind of amazing position kind of right at the start of the pandemic, where you were so close to you know, getting a space. George, I know I definitely don't need to remind you, but you had this amazing fundraising campaign, and then everything did kind of grind to a halt. But I think you folks have been really kind of inventive in how you've turned that into something you can actually do to sort of keep that momentum flowing as best you can, like while everything else is happening. So just thinking about sending out your monthly zines and how you can still involve people in this community that maybe just doesn't really look like what we imagined at the start of the year. Yeah, so I just wondered, like, where are you both at the moment? Do you have projects you're working on, or zines you're making or thinking about making?
Do you want to go first, George?
You can go.
So yeah, I really love this subject, because yeah, it seems like zines, as we were talking about just now, like have always been about the community as much as what's actually in them. But yeah, in terms of stuff that we've been doing when kind of COVID set in, we were in the middle of working on our 7th issue. We've been around 3 years or so. So we've had 5 issues come out. We were kind of doing an in-between zine, which was sort of our 6th one, and our 7th one is themed Futures. So we had all of our contributors working on kind of ideas that they thought that they could speculate around on how society would be changing, but then all these things happened in the world. And besides kind of needing to like reconsider maybe how our futures might change after this, it was also kind of juggling all the different demands of our different lives and the things that felt really urgent in the moment. Yeah, so in terms of like print stuff, we're kind of like digesting at the moment and thinking of what we could actually do in terms of zines. But yeah, the guys have been working on various projects. So before this COVID period, they Kay, June, and a couple of our friends who've worked on Daikon with us, Tessa and Kirsten, they organised the Remember Their 639 campaign, which was a one-day event where they invited loads of people to kind of put their heads together on issues around migrant workers and borders to so that we could raise funds for the victims of the 639 incident. And since then we've been kind of selling t-shirts and tote bags and things, raising money for the Vietnamese mental health service as well, which is really important kind of organisation that is kind of under threat right now. They've been needing 100 grand to sort of carry on, and they're only about 2% of their target at the moment. So yeah, there were loads of things that kind of felt like they needed sort of immediate help, and we have the resources and people who care deeply about things like that. So it felt like we really needed to rally on certain issues.
I think it's been really exciting, definitely from that initial moment of panic, a lot of us realizing that we do have access to stuff, like so many places that were suddenly doing fundraising. I think realizing that we had between us some capacity to help raise money or to help kind of spread awareness. Seems like people really quickly kind of rose to the occasion, and it was amazing seeing all of these projects kind of coming out really quickly, wasn't it? How about you, George? Where's your head at the moment?
Yeah, I'm just taking in what Jade's just mentioned, because that all sounded amazing. I feel like mine's going to be like, we've been making some zines. Because
I feel like one of the most exciting things is we all have such wildly different answers to basically just like, what have you been doing? Yeah, so don't worry at all.
So yeah, as you mentioned, obviously we were we just launched a kind of fundraising thing to get accessible gallery and book art space in Manchester, and yeah, it really felt like it was like so nearly there, and then obviously end of the world happened. So and we just started doing the things we like this month, the monthly zine that was meant to be like woo. It's meant to be such like just like a silly small project, and it's ended up being like this entire year's work so far. But yeah, they're just things that we've enjoyed on that month, and they get sent out to our Patreon followers. But they became like such a lifeline while we were in lockdown, because I have this tendency, and I think Shy Bands have this tendency to build zines up into being something that they're not, and being, the more we work within that format and the more we work with galleries, the more we're kind of getting indoctrined into making more like artist books and making zines that have to have this big purpose to go in the gallery show to like contextualize them. But this year I feel like I've really got back to just making, just to be doing something with my hands and kind of keeping busy. And because Izzy and Erin are both kind of in the at-risk category, when the lockdown happened, they kind of totally shut down, went back home to Northumberland. So we didn't see them. So having this kind of zine that we put together of just like tiny, nice things that we'd done in this like really enormously depressing time, it was really nice even for me to just see what Izzy and Erin were doing back home. And yeah, we went from being like, oh, we've just got to make this quick zine monthly and it'll be like a reason for people to support us, to it being like the main thing that we talk about. And because we haven't gone straight into the getting the space that we wanted, and we've took a bit of a step back, we've been able to donate some funds that we've raised through Patreon. We've been able to like buy little bits of machinery, get somewhere else to print the zines, which we've been using Marker printers in Salford, who are great. And it's been kind of nice to not be printing things myself. Like haven't been like hunched over the printer constantly. but yeah, I feel like that's the main project that we've worked on. We're kind of just now getting little bits and bobs of jobs coming up. We've done some online workshops. I kind of actually like them. I thought that I'd hate them at first, but we did some with, I'm gonna say it wrong, it's Reimagine Remake in Ireland. And it was like a 4-week course, and that was amazing, just teaching zine making in regards to a museum's collection in Northern Ireland. And that was great, but yeah, we've mostly just done the little zines.
What sort of bits do you like choose for the things that you've enjoyed in the month?
They're honestly so daft. They're like,
It's so good.
the one that we've just made, I don't know if I've got a copy of this month's one. I do, I'll go and get it. I can explain it.
Yeah, show and tell.
There's some nice pages. So this is the one from last month. It's got this great little sticker on it. I'm a fan.
We just got new ones printed.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's so stupid.
It looks so good.
Very nice.
But yeah, this month it was like a review of some donuts, and then it's kind of weird because it'll be like donuts, and then it'll be like a really serious piece about accessibility in contemporary art next to like Loch Ness monster photos.
Perfect.
But it's been fun though. It's nice to kind of go back to that thing that I first liked in zine making. That was just like, here's a paper version of a thing that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do feel like I've been, been kind of tricked into not feeling that way about zines recently.
I think, yeah, really similarly. I as soon as I was like didn't have access to the photocopier, I just thought, okay, that's just not something I'm going to be doing for a little while. But what I have been doing is writing letters and making cards and envelopes, and yeah, like basically making zines, but one at a time for individual people. So I think, yeah, like remembering why I started doing a lot of this in the first place, it was just to make friends, you know, which I think is true for a lot of us. And definitely that thing of just spending hours making a silly little thing for one person is like always really good, just to remember how good that feels.
I'm really into like the idea of mail art at the minute. Like I think about it all the time and think that's so nice and it's so relevant to how we're living at the minute. It's so exciting to get things in the post, but I'm also so lazy. Like when it comes to the post office, so I just can't.
So George, me and Rose talked about this yesterday, because I was saying I've been making rubber stamps and just kind of getting obsessively into envelopes. But Rose was talking about making things up at the press at Rabbits Road, and how we could almost collectively work on a project that was maybe kind of the opposite of the way a lot of us work anyway, and do something very slow and messy, and it could almost be something that you make a bit of something, send it on to the next person, like an old school kind of chain letter or something. Because I think there's a lot of us that have that like excitement about getting post and making that connection. Like that's a project that could just come out of this conversation, even just with us lot, easily.
Yeah, I feel like zines have kind of steered me away from getting like a kind of problematic online shopping habit when we were in lockdown. Because it's obviously it's way nicer to send people little bits of art than it is to buy things off Amazon. So there's kind of that nice aspect, I think, with mail art and posting zines out where people are getting that like exciting thing in the post on a day that they can't go outside, but it isn't something absolutely useless and covered in plastic.
I think with the Shy Bend zines as well, getting them really does just feel like a letter from you lot, like, oh my god, what have they been doing this month? Like, even if it's just like what TV show you've been watching or something, it's been really yeah, it's just like so nice to get them in the post, especially when and everything else happening on a given day might be completely shit. Yeah, it's so good.
Do you both in Shy Bands, are you like from art backgrounds?
Yeah, so we met on our we're all from the northeast, So we all met at Foundation in Sunderland. And then me and Eleanor went to Manchester to do fine art. Izzy went to Goldsmiths, and Erin did graphic design at Leeds.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are quite mostly fine art background.
I thought it was cool what you said about like that feeling of like art trying to co-opt the zines.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think about that quite a lot. It's like, again, what you're saying about like the nice handmade and like slow nature of things, and like when you just feel like you have the freedom to write whatever you want, it's like it's so important for the stuff to like not be of any particular consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like these days there is quite a lot of pressure on publishers to be like more magazines than like these days. Yeah, I guess maybe like we straddle that a bit, but more so like in recent stuff that we've made. It was really nice at the beginning, kind of like, you know, the trick where you like open up the stapler and you're like just stapling it against the table. Yeah. Just have painful and nice memories of that.
Are you from an art background?
Sort of like flunking-ish, because I did architecture in uni, so that's why I picked up doing InDesign stuff. And when me and the rest of the group started off meeting up together and thinking about a creative project, the others had sort of like bits of poetry and photos, and we were like, what are we going to do with this? Because we had a Facebook page that we were just posting stuff on, and I was actually Bella was like, we should make it into a physical item, and I was like, well, I can do it on InDesign. So
Amazing.
But yeah, no, there's not. Well, Hannah's an artist, and Jess is an artist as well, kind of like art educator.
I think it's nice not having that fine art background a bit, because I know when I was making zines at uni, it was very like, but why is it a zine? And I was always just like, well, because I've just fucking made it and it is a zine, that's why it's a zine.
Why is it a zine?
Yeah, it always had to have like this kind of, but what's the reason that this is a zine and not a painting? And it's like, well, because I can't paint, so it's a zine. And I think like what I was saying about how galleries and like the art world kind of co-opted zines, I now do still think like, well, why is it a zine? Why isn't it print? And I mean, sometimes it's good to think like that, but most of the time I think it's probably not. I think it's maybe better to just make the zine and figure it out afterwards.